When you picture retirement, you probably imagine the good stuff. No alarms, no commutes, and finally living life on your terms. But most of us spend decades chasing some magic number and miss one of the biggest assets we already have sitting right under our feet. Housing is one of the biggest financial anchors that you'll carry into retirement, and without a plan, it can quietly wreck everything that you've worked for, no matter how good your investment accounts look. The good news is if you handle it right, a paid-off home can be one of the biggest advantages that you have, way bigger than what most people realize. So let's break down the real value of a paid-off home in retirement, what it gives you, where it can go wrong, and how to use it to your advantage instead of letting it drag you down. When most people think about preparing for retirement, the focus is almost always on building up investment accounts, things like 401ks, IRAs, and taxable brokerage accounts. And that makes complete sense. You need money you can pull from these accounts to cover your living expenses. But here's the thing, for a lot of retirees today, their home is actually their single biggest asset. Bigger than their 401k, bigger than their IRA, and in some cases, even bigger than their entire investment portfolio combined. According to the Federal Reserve, the median net worth of households headed by someone aged 65 plus was about $410,000, and the primary residence made up a huge chunk of that. Median home equity for homeowners in this age group was around $200,000 to $250,000, while the median balance in retirement accounts of the same group was only about $170,000. The problem is we don't always think about a house the same way we think about investment accounts. We treat it as a place to live, which it is, but we often miss the fact that it's also a part of our retirement plan whether we realize it or not. And depending on how you handle it, it could either give you a huge advantage or quietly turn into a hidden liability. So why is a paid-off mortgage such a big deal for us pre-retirees as we move into retirement? It really comes down to a few powerful advantages that often get overlooked. The most obvious, but still one of the most important, is what I like to call cash flow relief. When your mortgage payment disappears, your fixed expenses drop significantly, which gives you an even bigger margin of safety. For us younger people, it can sometimes be hard to project ourselves that far into the future to even imagine the impact that will have. So just for fun, think about what it would feel like if you suddenly freed up 25 to 35% of your monthly expenses that are currently going toward your mortgage. That's thousands and thousands of dollars every year. Money you could either put towards something like a nice yearly vacation or just use to take a huge chunk of financial pressure off your plate. And in retirement, when your income is often limited to Social Security or portfolio withdrawals, having fewer fixed bills means a lot more breathing room every single month. Even if you have a solid nest egg, keeping your monthly expenses under control at that point in life can stretch your money a lot further and give you more flexibility when life eventually throws a few curveballs. And while the monthly breathing room alone is a huge win, the benefits of a paid-off home don't stop there. It also quietly changes the entire size of the retirement portfolio you actually need, and that can open up some very massive advantages most people don't think about. Every dollar that you do not have to spend on housing in retirement is a dollar that you do not have to save up to cover other expenses. It's a simple idea, but the impact can be massive when you actually run the numbers. For fun, let's say your mortgage payment is $1,400 per month. If you had to keep paying that during retirement, you'd need to set aside about $480,000 just to cover your mortgage, assuming a 3.5% withdrawal rate. Because 3.5% of $480,000 per year works out to $1,400 per month. And that's just to keep the roof over your head. By paying off your mortgage before you retire, you're not just lowering your bills, you're shrinking the size of the retirement portfolio you actually need to fund your lifestyle. So instead of the $2 million that you may think that you need, now it's only $1.5 million. And if you need less, that means you might be able to hit your retirement goals a lot faster with less pressure, or even retire earlier than you thought possible. It's kind of like prepaying for a part of your future home expenses while still in your working years, kind of like some of us do with a health savings account, which I show you how to do in another video that I'll have linked at the top of the screen and down in the description below. But here's the thing, even after the mortgage is gone, the value of your home doesn't just disappear. In fact, it can quietly become one of the most powerful financial levers that you have in retirement. Think of it like finding a $20 bill in your jacket pocket, except it's tens of thousands of dollars and comes with a crazy neighbor who runs his leaf blower at 9 p.m. and has a blow-up doll as a girlfriend. No, I'm not talking about my current neighbor. I promise. Research from Vanguard found that retirees who downsize or relocate unlock about $100,000 in home equity on average. And depending on where you live, especially if you're coming from a high growth area like the West Coast or Northeast, it can be even more. Vanguard estimates that about 25% of retirees could potentially tap into their home equity by relocating during retirement. That's real money that you can use to top off your retirement portfolio, cover expenses like healthcare, or just give yourself a bigger margin of safety if the market gets a little sketchy at that point in time. And the best part, you didn't have to work longer, invest better, or save more to get it. You simply unlocked value that was already sitting right there. Now, of course, tapping into that home equity usually means making some trade-offs like moving to a smaller home or relocating to a less expensive area. But if it fits your lifestyle, it can be a really powerful way to turn your housing wealth into more financial freedom later on. And beyond just unlocking equity, a paid-off home gives you something even more powerful: flexibility. You can stay, you can move, you can rent it out, or you can tap into the value later on if you need. When you're retired, having that kind of flexibility, the ability to adapt as life changes, can be just as valuable as money itself. But the value of a paid-off home isn't just about the numbers. Some of the biggest benefits are the ones you can't exactly measure, but you'll definitely feel them. It's those things that us nerdy, personal finance, numbery people forget sometimes, which cannot be calculated in a spreadsheet. The first is stability. Owning your home outright means you're protected from rent hikes, landlords selling the property, or getting priced out of your neighborhood. Think about it. If you've ever talked to someone who bought their home 20 or 30 years ago, the difference is massive. A house they paid $150,000 for back then could easily be worth $600,000 now. If they had to try to buy it again today based on their current income, there's a good chance they couldn't even afford it. All my friends out there from California are like shaking their head. You kidding me? $600,000 for a home? Yeah, you can get a shack for about that much out here. But because they bought it when prices were still reasonable, they get to live in a neighborhood that would otherwise be completely out of reach. Once it's yours, and that peace of mind becomes a lot more valuable when you're living on a fixed income. There's also the emotional attachment side of things. A lot of retirees want to stay in the same home because it's not just about the walls and the roof, it's about memories, family, community, and a sense of belonging. In fact, Vanguard's research pointed out that many retirees resist moving because the emotional and social ties are just as important as the financial ones. Then there's the freedom to adapt your home to fit your needs as you age. Maybe you need to add ramps, grab bars, or make other accessibility upgrades. If you own the place, you're not asking anyone's permission. You can customize it however you want to stay independent for a lot longer. But, and this is important, it's also worth being honest about the trade-offs. Staying in a big, high-maintenance home can eventually become more of a burden than a blessing. That 4-bedroom house you loved at age 45 might feel a lot less practical when you're 75 and looking at the stairs like they're Mount Everest. So while the intangible benefits of a paid-off home are real, it's important to keep checking in over time to make sure your home is still serving you and not the other way around. Now, with all that said, a paid-off home can be a huge advantage, but it's not a magic solution. There's a few traps that can trip people up if they're not careful. Before I go into these traps, let me know in the comments below if you plan on paying off your home before retirement, within a few years after, or never. The first big trap is carrying too much mortgage debt going into retirement. According to research out of the University of Michigan, about 50% of recent retirees still had a mortgage, and the median balance wasn't small either, hovering around $108,000. On the surface, this doesn't seem that big of a deal, except retirees who still carry mortgage debt tend to retire later, spend less during retirement, and are more likely to sell their homes earlier than they planned because of financial pressure. That same study out of Michigan also found that mortgage debt often forces retirees to cut back on discretionary spending, delay major purchases, and increase their reliance on Social Security benefits earlier than intended. The whole point of retirement is to have freedom. Walking into it with a big mortgage still hanging over you can quietly erode that freedom before you even get started. Second is liquidity risk, and this is a big one most people don't think about until it's too late. Homes are great, but they're not a checking account. Your house might be worth a lot on paper, but if most of your wealth is tied up in it, you could end up being house rich and cash poor. Check this out. According to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the median net worth for people 65 to 74 is about $410,000, with median home equity at $200,000. That means almost 50% of their net worth is tied up in their home. Without enough liquid assets, your only options are to sell the home, take out a HELOC, or try a reverse mortgage, none of which guarantee terms in your favor. No question, housing wealth is valuable, but it's not the same as liquid cash in a bank or investment accounts to cover other expenses. Sure, you've got a nice house, but if you're having to sell plasma a few times per month because your retirement accounts are tapped out, then what's the point? That's why the net worth tracker within my personal finance bundle separates net worth with and without your home. Counting your personal residence as liquid wealth can be wildly misleading and send the wrong signal about how good of shape you're in. You can gain access to my spreadsheet bundle down in the description below. And third, as much as getting the mortgage paid off right before retirement is helpful, just because it's gone doesn't mean the bills stop showing up. You're still on the hook for property taxes, homeowners insurance, regular maintenance, and the occasional congratulations, you're the proud owner of a $20,000 roof replacement moment. Random thought side note, sometimes it doesn't feel like any of us will ever actually own our home, because if you think about it, when you pay it off, you're still stuck paying property taxes forever, like the government's just renting you your own dirt. It's one of those things that you realize when you get a little bit older where you're like, hey, wait a second, are we all getting scammed here or what? Sorry about that, back to the video. The bigger and more expensive your house, the bigger those bills tend to get. Higher insurance premiums, higher repair costs, and higher property tax assessments. Shout out to all of you who know your house is worth a lot more, but the government hasn't reassessed it in a long time, so your property taxes haven't spiked up yet. Either way, you're still going to need a nice, steady stream of income to handle everything that comes with owning a home. So yeah, paying off your mortgage is a huge win, but you're definitely not off the financial hook. It just means that your house has traded places from the bank's best friend forever to your money-hungry home forever. Now, if you want to know when to focus on paying off your mortgage early, then you can watch this video to your left next. Hit that like button before you go. I'll see you in the next one, friends. Done.